Hey, so it's day 2 of this Making My Course Accessible challenge. And today we're talking about color because color, in my opinion, is one of the easiest ways to create a more accessible course and to get it passing at least some of your basic standards. So, first of all, this is the course that I developed before I thought really deeply about accessibility. And so here is a button down here. It's using all of those brand colors. So I'm sticking to the theme, but there's a lot of things that you're going to realize that I could have done differently throughout. So let me just share with you a few resources that I really like to use. So the first one that I've seen being recommended from so many people, and especially all of the accessibility experts, they definitely recommend this one. So here's WebAIM contrast checker, and I will put these resources into my blog post at the end of the week. And I'll also add it to the comments if you're looking to grab it really quickly. But this is a really great one because you can just add in your hex values and then you can determine whether this is going to pass or fail, and it will tell you the ratio as well. So this is that background color that I have on my button and then the foreground color, and we can see that it is definitely not passing on most accounts. And one thing that I loved about in this book, Designed for All Learners, there's a chapter on perspectives and color contrast and all kinds of really good information. And it says that foreground and background colors should have a minimum of 4.5 to 1 ratio, which applies to text, icons, and focus indicators against the background. So I'm going to show you a little bit of this course that I've developed and show you kind of what I did for this aspect. So within my new course in my accessibility, I have actually taken some considerations into that button. So I tested my colors, and that pink, even though this is a gradient, I just went with that lightest color pink because there are white text on top of that pink. So I'm going to go with that as the base level. So that's a 3.5 to 1 ratio, which does not pass. That's failing. And then I also took into account the background color with the button color. So the background is a gray and this button color is pink. So that's actually 4.3 to 1. So that one's also not passing when we think about the 4.5 to 1 ratio. And then I thought about, well, maybe I can use a different color because that's probably where you would go to first. If you have a set of standards that are in your color palette, you might try to look for a different color that would work better. So I was like, well, let's try to use the purple that we have here. So I used the purple. I did the same type of little gradient here, and the text in the button, the foreground is white and the button background is purple. And those do pass at 11.2 to 1 ratio, but the background is gray and the foreground is purple of this button. So that's actually at a 1.3 to 1. So that is not an accessible button because you can't tell the difference enough. There's not enough of a contrast between the background and the button. So then I was thinking maybe we can go to a basic route since we don't have a ton of different colors here. We could use the blush or things like that, but I did want to keep the dark gray background for this example. And if I did a white button with the black text, then I'm passing at a high 21 to 1 ratio, and the background, which is the gray to the white, would be 15.1 to 1 ratio. So those two they work really well, and I'll show you the hover state on these comparisons in a few seconds. So the second one is the gray. So I went ahead and used the brand color of the gray, and the background, the gray to the text is 14.8 to 1, so that definitely passes. And then the background gray to the lighter gray is 10.7 to 1, so that one also passes. So I really liked this purple button, and I thought that maybe another idea that I could do is adding a white stroke to it. So that does still pass at 11.2 to 1 as the purple to white ratio, but now I have this white background on the gray, and that's 15.1. So I believe this is going to pass and be a better experience by being able to see that this is a button and there's a contrast between the background. So let me know if you have other ideas. But let me quickly show you what the hover states look like on this one. So here I just had that gradient and that one's not going to pass. Same with this one. Even though there is a slight gradient change, it's not going to pass because of the color contrast. This one here, I added a slight glow to it. And this glow is always tricky because sometimes the glow shows up differently on different people's screens. So even though this is the largest glow option that we have in Articulate Storyline, it still is a little bit dim, especially on the black background. And we know that it doesn't quite pass. So I don't know if I would use this in my course, but it is an option. And if there's another color that might work better, that might be better. And same here, I added that pink one. You can almost see it a little bit better with the gray. And then this one, I kept that same hover state where it just switches the gradient around and used that white as my stroke. Now these two, I tried to get a little bit more creative and I added an animated hover state so that it kind of gives an indicator that you're hovering over this button. And it's that pink, so technically it doesn't pass that standard, but since our whole button is white, I thought it might be okay. So this is an example of one that also might be a little bit distracting to your users, so just use it in the best way that you think would be possible. So which option might be best? And this, there might be a totally different option that you can think of, and I think that's the awesome thing about accessibility is that there are so many different options and we can get immediate feedback from people in our communities just by asking, hey, which hover state might be best by posting on LinkedIn. So in your opinion, which hover state would you choose or which button would you prefer? I'm going to go ahead with these options here just because I like the subtle animation. And then I'm going to show you a few other areas of color contrast that could have been changed in my course. And first, I want to also show you another resource that I have been using that I really enjoy. And this is Adobe Color. I've talked about it once before, but I like that they have this accessibility tools section. So if you're creating a course from scratch, basically no color palette in mind. Maybe you have some brand standards that you need to adhere to, but they're not set in stone for the entire course, and you're able to kind of adjust your color palette based on the theme or the content. Then maybe you want to use this tool because you can start by choosing, a theme or selecting a picture and adding a theme from there. But I like that you can put in your text color and your background color. So for example, let's look at our purple as our background color and our text color is white. So we can see that there is a good ratio there, and you can change the standard even to see if it passes on the AAA as well. But what I really like, if you're not, so let's talk about it in the sense of using the pink, right? Because the pink is the one that is highly recognizable, most likely as the brand color. And if it's not going to pass, you can also look at adjusting the contrast ratio here. I like the suggestions. So if I wanted to apply this suggestion, it's still not passing actually with a AAA standard, but you are looking to pass at this AA. So if I go even further on the suggested ratios, then I have this 9:1 ratio, which would pass at AAA. And so this is a very different color, and it doesn't really go along with your brand color that you're looking at, but it is a more accessible experience. So if you're kind of building those from the ground up, then I would look into this tool to give you some different ideas of colors that could work. Now there's another tool that I really like to use. This is the Color Contrast Analyzer, and this is one that you can just download on your computer and use, and it does the same thing, but it's just a way that you can kind of have it whenever you don't need a Wi-Fi signal for this one. Anyways, let me show you the next one, And here's the original course that I built. I'm going to show you quickly. Within this little experience here, they are reviewing items on this flagged image, or this flagged email. And I have all of those little pop-ups that come in, and they're all that pink with the white text, which is cool, but it didn't work out in color contrast standards. So when I went to redo that one, I'll show you a little bit of what this looks like. And I'm going to share both my before and after courses once I get them completely finished. So within this experience here, I just changed it to my purple with a white stroke on it so that it's more accessible for the color contrast of purple to white on your text. And then I also added that stroke so when it goes over the background, you can see it a little bit more clearly there as well. The other thing that I loved about this book is that it talks a little bit about using color, and that color cannot be the only indicator of a choice that you've made, right? So in the first course that I did, I created some feedback. And so you're entering your reasoning in the text box. Your selection is coming up into that box, and then you're getting some feedback based on what you selected, if you thought this was a threat or not. So here you got it. This is positive feedback. And then also if you go into here, this is neutral feedback. Maybe this is what you could have done better to identify that this is a threat. Red and green in the United States are common indicators of pass fail or positive, negative, positive, neutral results. And so in this book, they talk about how it's not a very accessible experience because red and green are probably two of the hardest colors to see if you're colorblind or to determine what the actual result is, right? So what I did differently in here is this green is actually not accessible either. So that's kind of another thing. But within my other course, I still used my idea of selecting, entering your reasoning and then having feedback. But instead, I just used that dark purple and I added an icon here to show that this is actually a threat. So you're incorrect. And then your feedback is positive here. So although the colors, you can still use red and green, but in addition to that, you would also maybe want to include an icon or an indicator that their choice is correct or incorrect. And then I think that's all I had for color. There's a few different points within my course that I decided to kind of change up those buttons and things like that. But something else that I thought about using or kind of considering is doing a light mode. I think it looks cool and it would be a pretty cool experience, but depending on kind of what you're wanting to do. And if you're interested in joining my office hours today, and I'm doing it Tuesday, Wednesday, and Friday this week, I just have 1 hour office hour each day to kind of talk through anything that you're kind of struggling with or that you're curious about or anything that I can help ideate on. So if you're interested in doing that, please come and join me. And I will be putting all of this information into a blog post at the end of the week. And so I'm really excited to hear your feedback. And as always, if you are an accessibility expert, please add your comments or thoughts or how I could do something better or differently in the comments. Thanks.